Welcome to the 11th episode of Frames of the Future, a brand new podcast presented by the Eleanor Rose International Film Festival. This podcast is dedicated to connecting with filmmakers and creatives from around the world, offering an inside look into their projects, their process, and the stories behind the work. We believe every artist deserves the opportunity to share their creative vision with an audience, and Frames of the Future was created to do exactly that. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, feel free to send us a DM or email us at contact@eleanorrosefilmfestival.com. The Eleanor Rose International Film Festival is a global celebration of bold, innovative storytelling, bringing filmmakers from around the world together in the heart of Pennsylvania. Taking place May 29th through 31st, 2026, at the historic Roxy Theater in Northampton, the festival features theatrical screenings on the big screen, a glamorous red carpet experience, exclusive networking events, and insightful talks and Q&As led by industry professionals. Whether you're an emerging artist or an established filmmaker, Eleanor Rose is where stories connect, ideas collide, and the future of film takes center stage. In today's episode, we're excited to welcome filmmaker Hunter Wilde. Hunter Wilde is a filmmaker and screenwriter from Eastern Pennsylvania who thrives in the absurd. He's best known for his web series Fast, about a red superhero character named Speeder-Man. His most recent film, The Despicable Speeder-Man, is about Speeder-Man's psychological process behind saving citizens. Listen as Hunter shares his directing and editing approach, what he wants audiences to take away from his film, and Speeder-Man's character development. I'm entertainment journalist Ashley Kane. Welcome to Frames of the Future. Hunter, welcome to Frames of the Future.
Hi, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Your film, The Despicable Speeder-Man, is based off of your web series called Fast, which explores a red superhero character named Speeder-Man. This very film is a callback to the video you posted in 2019. Having another opportunity to explore Speeder-Man in this situation, what did you want to do differently this time around, and how has your perspective on the character evolved since then?
Pretty much everything from the ground up. I really wanted to improve just the entire project. When I made that first video, I really didn't have there wasn't a lot of hindsight going into it. I very much felt like it was going to be like a one-off sketch, because I feel like my roots really are in like sketch comedy, just in like little one-off shorts. So that was more or less kind of my approach going into it initially. And not having, when you start out, you don't have the foresight and the experience to kind of really get the visuals down, the sound. So I felt like just this was I was at this point where like I feel like this is the right time to go back and kind of overhaul this original idea and improve upon it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like how you've really dived deep into the his psychological mind and processes, like very much different from the 2019 video. How did you, go about taking this character from that video and then kind of making it more, three-dimensional?
I feel like a lot of the time just playing that character, like I'm in it, like I'm almost in his head when doing it. Like when I have the mask on and the goggles, like I'm kind of in that zone.
Hmm.
So doing that so much over the years, I've just kind of had like a good good idea on the psychology of the character. And doing this remake, I kind of wanted to do a more like an analytical angle to it. So, there's kind of like this like montage sequence where we're kind of like, oh, yeah, like you said, in his head.
Hmm.
And it was very nice to kind of delve deeper into that and kind of think like, he thinks of himself as a hero at the end of the day. He thinks of himself as, a morally good person, but there is kind of that cognitive dissonance that he can't get over the fact that he is like a malicious and almost petty uh, person.
Hmm. Yeah. I want to like go back to that, yeah, that montage of his mind because yeah, in that montage, he questions if bad people deserve second chances when he's saving citizens, and then he also like questions that himself, like, can do I deserve a second chance? Like, because I messed up. As the writer, what do you want audiences to take away after watching your film? Like, what message?
For sure. So that's really the question. That kind of ties into the quote at the very beginning. And it kind of this idea of unreliability and almost deception. Because the very start of the film, I believe it's a quote from Alan Moore about kind of the cultural zeitgeist of comic books and superheroes, like in the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So that plays out, and then I think I attribute it to like Frank Miller or something, completely different writer. And there's that parentheses at the very bottom that says probably. So I kind of wanted to have that as like the tone setter and kind of the vibe of what this film's about. With that montage, uh, again being in Speeder-Man's head, he's like so close to getting it, and I really wanted to make that an important point in that scene, to have this. He's so close to having this epiphany that like everyone has the opportunity to be a good person. Everyone has the opportunity to have, a second chance. And then, right as he's about to cross that border, finally cross that line and kind of change, he dials it back from like 0 to 100.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Me." He thinks like, okay, even I deserve it. He makes it all about himself. The narcissism kind of takes over, and the entire moral backbone that he's been building up to dissolves in an instant.
Yeah, yeah. And I really appreciated how you took his internal conflict, the thing that he's been, some not a tangible thing that it's hard to explain. Like these thoughts he's having aren't tangible, but you take those thoughts and that kind of internal conflict and make it visual through this montage. So I'm interested in hearing how like you went about creating that sequence.
It was a lot of fun making up that sequence, and part of that was a collaboration with a co-editor of mine, Mason McGowan. So him and I kind of hopped back and forth between cutting together that montage. Um, I definitely wanted almost like this like trippy vibe, like you're kind of flashing through different memories and different thoughts, and almost kind of like this distortion of those thoughts. So you're getting brief glimpses of like the mugger, the woman, and even like some almost like point of POV shots of him running, almost like you get this like perspective of like what he sees while he's running. So I wanted to be almost like his perception of the world by default is pretty much distorted. Like he doesn't have a concrete, objective view of the world.
Yeah, it's almost like us as viewers are put in his shoes and are seeing how he, as you said, views the world and sees what's happening in front of him. And then in the beginning, we as viewers can make our own, like, we're outside of his head, so we can make that own internal, like, out external judgment.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting, and you talk a lot about memory, and I want to there's also another montage you include at the end where this mystery man has like it's kind of like his memories, as you said, of the victim. What was your intention behind using that montage to shape how we understand their relationship?
So that's a good point here. So that character is a long running character from the web series. His name is Melvin Mugger, the twin brother of Nicholas Mugger. So his whole deal is that he is on a 24/7 revenge quest to find Speeder-Man, but Speeder-Man's a quick guy, so anytime he tries to find him, he always misses him. So pretty much all of Melvin's adventures are just always slightly adjacent to what Speederman's doing. Um, so I wanted to slip that in, going back to the whole like overhaul aspect. Now that we kind of have an idea on this world, because we spent a lot of time kind of writing a lot of world building just kind of in our heads, like as like, okay, this is what's going on while this is happening. It kind of went out of hand, and I thought it would be fun to kind of slip in a little after credits scene with Melvin as like a little Easter egg.
Yeah, definitely. And I really appreciated that because I feel like, this is a stylistic choice of yours to include kind of like a tag or cliffhanger at the end with many of your other projects you've done as well. Uh, and it's, of this mystery man seeking revenge for Speederman's victim. How should audiences interpret that? Should we be expecting more from this specific story, or is it meant to just leave us wondering?
Hmm. Well, I don't have plans now for a remake of the sequel video to the original sketch, which follows this Mystery Man.
Mhm.
Uh, Definitely have plans for him and Speederman going forward. I would love to have at least a finale film with them confronting one another. Uh, Not sure when that day will come, but I think that is where everything needs to come ahead. When that day comes and they finally cross paths, I feel like that's going to be the end of it all.
Yeah, you got to make that like a whole like either feature film or like big finale. Like it's so interesting how you've like just dove headfirst into this character. Like what inspired you to focus on one character for so long?
I found him charming. Like there's something about just I don't know if it's how petty he is or if it's just the almost like this childish aspect, because he is objectively like a bad person. Speederman, horrible person, absolute nightmare to handle. Um, but at the same time, he is, you got this very childish aspect to him. This, the voice is very unexpected. I've had a lot of people ask me like, "What's the deal with the voice?" And honestly, I couldn't give like a concrete explanation of where it came from. It just kind of felt right. Like, I was kind of the day we were going to shoot Fast. I was just kind of walking around my living room in like half the suit, just practicing different voices, and then eventually I landed on something like this. So
Oh
I
my
kind of
gosh, you are the voice.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
it just felt very it just kind of fit that character. And then, it kind of snowballed after that because, like, we wanted to do like a trilogy of skits. This one with the mugger, uh, this mystery man, Melvin, and then ideally like a finale film where like something crazy happens. Maybe it's like the apocalypse. We kind of touch on that in like a mockumentary sketch from a few years ago. But then the more people I'd show it, they'd be like, "Oh, yo, this is awesome. Would you want to do this?" And then eventually, I'm like, "Yeah, let's shoot more." And then over the years, we're just kind of like making more and more of these sketches, and
Mhm.
we're having a good time doing it.
Yeah, you kind of created this universe, It's almost like to compare it to like Marvel, you're making this character in all these different situations and just kind of like seeing his journey throughout life. I think it's so interesting and not a lot of filmmakers today are doing. So I very much commend you for that. Um,
Marvel and DC are still trying to catch up with us. It's
right.
very good to see what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah. It's cool to like, you're making this universe to have something to like look at to like, give you kind of a inspiration. And I want to, keep diving deeper into the Speederman character. Can you take us back to how you developed his outward appearance, like the costume, color choices, and his overall look?
So I was going with, Speeder-Man, obviously Spider-Man. That's like the obvious kind of correlation.
Yeah.
Uh, I was looking at a lot of like Spider-Verse. I think Spider-Verse came out like a year before, so you had kind of like the hoodie over the suit, and I'm a big fan of like the X-Men movies. So, Quicksilver, the slows everything down. He's like walking, everything's still. So I wanted like a silver pattern. The rest of it, I kind of just went around my mom's house and just like grabbed random things and threw them together. So like the goggles, to this day, those goggles were just an old pair of welding goggles I found in the basement. And they've just kind of stuck. Like 2019 and now, those goggles are still in use.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting, like you can like find these things and put it all together. And you know, I feel like the color red can symbolize many things. And I know that you were talking about like kind of your inspiration was from like Spider-Man and Marvel Universe. I just think, it's cool to think like, oh, red, the color red has such a deep meaning too, because it also symbolizes like danger, and
Mm-hmm.
how like maybe Spider-Man can be a danger to others and a danger to himself at times, you know?
Yeah,
I think it's
that's
just so interesting what color can represent in film as well. I don't know if you ever thought about that.
I did at least in hindsight for this one, and I see that as a valid interpretation of the suit.
Yeah.
And maybe subconsciously I had that in mind while shooting Despicable Speeder-Man, because there's a bit of a color contrast going on between him and the mugger character. We had him in this like white and almost like turquoise hoodie. So
Mhm.
I felt like it's a good contrast, and I feel
Yeah.
like that represents kind of a parallel, like a bit of a parallel, but like a contrast between the two of them.
Yeah, that's so interesting because, white like symbolizes innocence, and just how it's like this reversal, because in the beginning you think, oh, like we see the villain is the man in the white sweatshirt, but reverse, like if you think about color, it's really Speeder-Man. That's so interesting. Um, and yeah, like did you work with someone with costuming, or did you kind of like browse and find something yourself? How did you go about that?
With costuming, we really just kind of hopped around Amazon and just looked for like whatever kind of fit the vibe. My good friend Peter Sabino, he was the assistant director on the film, and honestly, it would not have existed without him. So this is my shout out, Pete.
Yes, Peter.
You're a legend. Uh, him and I would kind of just sit around and we would just go through like Amazon. Sometimes I would go to like different stores and just kind of walk around and see what worked. For the muggers hoodie, I deliberately wanted to find something very garish. So I was looking at different like graffiti patterns, and I found that teal and white one. I showed it to Pete, and he's like, "That looks ugly," and I go, "Yeah, it's perfect." So I ordered two of them. One for my actor and good friend Chris Larragee to wear, for the first minute or so of the film, and then we got a stunt hoodie for when we did the arm prosthetic, so we could cover it in all this blood and not worry about destroying only one. We would have this backup just in case.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned that like that very gruesome scene in the opening, and I do want to talk about that. Uh, your film features such a strong theme of violence, and I wanted to know how you approached that scene specifically with directing and editing that sequence together, especially the decision to cut between, the two characters talking, and then you have your third character bleeding out, and it's so crazy yet so not, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's they kind of forget about him after a while, and that's very deliberate. I wanted that was my favorite. Honestly, one of my favorite things to cut together is just that whole sequence of uh the mugger just like freaking out and dying, and then Speederman and this woman are just like completely going off topic, and they're just arguing. At that point, they're just arguing amongst one another about like etiquette. Like they're not even this guy dying is pretty much like a second subject at that point. And I definitely think there's something to be said about I think like disassociation with violence, especially nowadays with like social media and just like how much information we get a day.
Mhm.
We hear so many. We get so much on like tragedies. Pretty much can scroll like Instagram Reels, and you'll see. You'll get that's pretty much like the news for people now. They'll scroll on Instagram and you'll learn like some horrific news that happened somewhere, and it's all in between like cooking tutorials and memes of cats. So you're pretty much kind of like over time disassociating that from like the reality of these horrific events are happening.
Mhm.
But at the same time you're getting it through channels where you're just not, it kind of just drowns out in the noise. And I feel like a part of that is kind of in that whole edit, just kind of this idea of these two characters definitely acknowledge that this is happening, but over time the even in the sound mixing, his yelling gets quieter and quieter as the conversation goes on until you just don't hear it at all.
Mhm. So were you trying to capture that desensitization that we all experience?
I would say so. More in like a more on a satirical angle. And
Right.
in the original Fast, I don't think we really had that. I think like the original sketch, it's like 3 minutes long. So like the entire scene of like the mugger dying, it's like maybe a minute. And I definitely wanted to draw this one out a little bit and play on the ridiculousness of these characters. One of them definitely cares, but eventually it becomes again the second subject compared to the etiquette of Speeder-Man and just his whole personality just being obnoxious.
Mhm. Yeah, it's almost like you're trying to feature both sides of the story of like this is what reality should look like, but then on the other hand, this is what reality is actually looking like. Like maybe we should be the woman reacting to this tragedy, being like, "Oh my gosh, like someone is dying right in front of me." But then like like in modern day, right now, we're kind of like Speederman, where we react to the strategy like, oh, like, it happens, and maybe it was like meant to happen in a way where like as Speederman was trying to justify it in the scene and
Very, very, yeah. And I think the moment that kind of encapsulates that is when he like walks up to her and he's like, "Oh, what happened?" And, she's like, "Oh, he's bleeding. Why would like, oh, why would that?" And then he looks down, he sees he has the guy's arm in his hand. Fun fact: that is the exact same arm prop from the original sketch. So that's a little Easter egg. Uh, from the very first video. So I wanted to slip that in. Despite that, I don't think realistically it doesn't look as real,
Mhm.
but I think it was a. I deliberately wanted to have like this cute Easter egg for the original video.
Yeah, no, that's so cool to be like, oh my gosh, yeah, like this was from the original. This is your second year submitting to Eleanor Rose International Film Festival. Last year you submitted another short in the Speederman universe. What did you learn from last year's experience that influenced how you made this film?
Um, I definitely it's a lot of just coming out of my shell and just kind of getting out there and just talking to people. The film I submitted last year, A Fast Stop, originally wasn't supposed to be a film festival project. That was just something a few friends and I we shot over winter break during college, and I just had it sitting around. So I thought, oh, let's throw it around a few places. Let's see what happens. And I got a lot of positive reception for it. So I'm very grateful for that. And again, going, the fact that we didn't really make it for a film festival, I very much felt like a fish out of water. Like I'm like, oh, these other guys, all these other talented filmmakers, they all made these fantastic projects, and then here's me, this schmuck, just coming in with his little 3-minute YouTube video. So I definitely had a little, a little bit of anxiety, just kind of like approaching people and talking about it. But I've kind of grown to walk in with a bit more confidence and kind of present myself a bit more, because I feel like the best person to sell yourself is you. You're the person that's gonna go out there and talk to people about what you're making, what you're doing. There's no better source of that. You kind of have to run your own. You kind of have to present yourself and run your own show for the most part. And I feel like that's very important. I very much learned that during my first film fest run.
Yeah. And, Hunter, you deserve to be there, Like, yeah, like it's everyone starts from somewhere and there's no other place than up. So I'm excited to see where Speeder-Man takes you and what's next for Speeder-Man. We're gonna now go to the game segment. This is a Would You Rather film edition. I'm gonna ask you 6 Would You Rather questions, rapid fire. And so no explanation, just say your answer. And yeah, are you ready?
All right, let's do it. I'm
Okay.
locked in.
Locked in? Okay, let's go. Would you rather adapt the Speeder-Man universe into a TV series or film franchise?
Probably a film franchise. I feel like you can't overstay its welcome. You just gotta boom, boom, boom. You're done.
Yeah, watch it in the theater. Okay. Would you rather have your film go viral online or win a major festival award?
I love my film festivals. I would say award if possible.
Okay.
I don't think that's ever happened.
Fingers crossed. Would you rather write, direct, or edit?
I tend to enjoy the writing side. I think writing would be one. Editing second.
Okay.
Editing second.
Would you rather make films for a small audience that loves your work or a big audience that casually watches it?
That's a good one. 100% a small audience. I feel like playing to a niche is a lot more gratifying than a larger crowd that might be, they're like, oh, that's nice, and then they're back to their phones or something.
Right. Yeah. The smaller audience can really like engage with you. Yeah. Would you rather only be able to make superhero films or never make them again?
I would say, never. If I didn't have to make them again, that's a sacrifice I would have to make. You gotta do other stuff eventually.
Yeah, definitely. And would you rather have a perfect opening or a perfect ending?
Perfect ending. You gotta land it. You
Yeah.
gotta land it. As long as you
And
land
strong.
it, end strong, people are gonna love it.
Yes, yes. Well, Hunter, thank you so much for joining Frames of the Future. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Ashley. This was fantastic.
I'm entertainment journalist Ashley Kane. Thanks for watching.